Hi everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Tobie DePauw and I work with PeopleForBikes and RideSpot. And I'm excited to share this with you today. Everyone's asking what's next? Where do we go from here? And so our idea was that we should get some of the best minds who are helping us figure out the best data in the industry and have them share what they're seeing, and then also share some practical resources and takeaways that you can put to use when you get back home. So thank you very much for coming. I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have Stephanie Maez, the Managing Director for Outdoor Foundation. We have Dr. Jennifer Boldry, the Applied Innovation Manager at Naxion. We have Patrick Hogan from PeopleForBikes. He's our bicycle industry research manager.
That's it.
I got all 4 words. Okay, and then we have, and then of course we have Nick Sargent from SIA. So I'd like you all to give them an applause, please. Awesome. So we're going to use 3 main questions to kind of guide our time today. And so they're really simple questions with very complicated answer. The first question is, what do we know? What do we know about this wave of new outdoor participants? The next question is, how do we know that? Where does that data come from? And how are we kind of processing that data? And then the last thing is, what are we going to do about it? What can we learn from these insights to turn into practical applications for you and for us to keep this boom going? And so before we get started, we would like to know a little bit more about who we're talking to. So if you are a retailer, please raise your hand. Okay, excellent. If you're a supplier, please raise your hand. Okay, nonprofit? Cool. Okay, and media? Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. One more thing. Our goal today is to encourage you to share some insights, hopefully spark some conversations that will happen today or in the future. We're not here to should on you. It's not nice to tell people what they should do all the time, so we're not here to do that. We're here to engage in conversation. And so after this panel, we'd like to invite you all to the hallway. Out the door to the left, we'll be answering questions in person and hopefully connect you with each other as well. So let's start. Let's go back to the start. The title is The Boom is Just the Beginning. So the boom, what do we know? Okay. So in order to know where we're going to go, we got to start with what we know. So Jennifer, would you like to start us off?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see everybody's smiling eyes out there, at least some. So my name's Jennifer, and I'm here to talk to you about some research that OIA and Naxion teamed up to really understand or better understand the demographics, psychographics, and behaviors of these new COVID outdoor participants. I think, everybody's seen a lot of the data. There were many new people who got outdoors during the pandemic. And so OIA was super interested in finding out more about them so that we can inform our efforts to kind of keep these people going, right? Keep the party going. So we did a study in December of 2020, reached out to new pandemic participants, so people who had participated in outdoor activities for the first time in at least a 12-month lag, or the first time ever. And what we found was actually pretty interesting. Some of it will feel like, yeah, no kidding, but I think it points to some really important action items that Stephanie will talk about. So the first thing we found is that of all the activities that we talked about, indoor or outdoor, spending time with family and friends is not only the most important, but the most enjoyable. And you're probably sitting there like, well, no kidding. I mean, it's a pandemic. We want to be with our loved ones. But I think what's important is that those of us in the outdoor industry often think about the activity as the thing. But that suggests that we should think about the activity as a conduit to spending time with our loved ones. And that might be a really different set of strategies than what we usually think about when we think about, selling hiking or selling camping or that sort of thing. The second thing we found is that these new pandemic participants are more diverse than our existing base. More diverse in terms of gender, ethnicity, slightly more diverse in terms of income, and also slightly more likely to live in urban areas, which is leading to the next point, which is that these outdoor participants mostly took up activities that are super easy to do, that they've done before, or that they can do close to home, which is a key theme. So things like walking or running or jogging, bicycling, fishing, things that are not really hard to learn. There's not a big barrier to entry. And that can help us understand about where we might find these new people, where we might introduce them to new activities, that sort of thing. The fourth thing, and I'm looking at my notes now so I don't forget, is it my fourth or fifth? Maybe I'm on the fifth thing now. The fifth thing is, at the end of the survey, we asked in an open-ended format for people to tell us a little bit more about how the pandemic had impacted their leisure time activities. And we found really kind of two almost opposite reactions. Some people talked about how the pandemic had given them an opportunity to sort of step back and reevaluate their priorities, to think more about how they want to spend their time. And other people really talked about being sad and being lonely, feelings of loss, feelings of fear. I mean, some really powerful stuff in that open end. And I think what struck me about that is no matter which end of the spectrum you fall on, outdoor activities are appropriate. They're antidotes to all of those terrible things we feel when we're alone in a pandemic, that fear and that loneliness. But they're also conduits or facilitators of being able to prioritize what's important to us. And I think, those could be real key messages for these new pandemic participants. So the whole report is on the OIA website. So if you're interested in more detail, more findings, you can certainly go to OIA's website, download that whole report for free. But I thought those were, for me, those were kind of the top 5 things that really stood out.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. So you'll notice that we don't have slides, but you do have books. So we're encouraging you to write your own notes, which maybe, maybe that was assuming a lot, but we hope you do engage with the information that we're sharing that way. Some of the stuff that we have or we will be sharing is already in the book, but there's plenty of room for notes in there as well. So thank you very much, Jennifer, for sharing. Patrick, there's some similarities there on the bike side, is there not?
Absolutely. So very similar to the research process which Jennifer undertook, PeopleForBikes had a lot of those same research questions within our particular bike lane. As many of you likely noticed, there was an increase in participation within cycling activities last year, and PeopleForBikes undertook a study at the end of 2020 to really measure how many folks were coming into the sport and what we could do to keep them. So what we identified through a general population study of 10,000 American adults was that 4% of the population rode a bike for the first time within a year, or maybe the first time ever, which is huge. So we're finding a new audience, and we're reconnecting with an audience that may have dropped off somewhere along the way. In addition, 6% of American adults who had been riding bikes changed the way they were riding bikes during the pandemic. And what that means is that maybe folks that were riding in spin classes, once gyms shut down during COVID, they purchased a bike and they started riding mountain bikes. So they were riding for transportation and commuting. So all in all, about 10% of American adults changed the way they were interacting with bicycles during the pandemic. And a lot of this is due to changing constraints. We all know that gyms and health clubs closed last year, that parents with children were all of a sudden forced to help facilitate their learning at home, and this changed how we interacted with our outdoor recreation pursuits, what we did with our leisure time. So the next question that we came across was, well, what does that mean when those constraints go back to the pre-pandemic constraints? What does it mean when all of a sudden we're commuting to work again, or we have other recreation activities available to us? What we found was that there were two factors that really popped out, two motivating factors that would keep new riders involved with cycling and help foster the continued growth of cycling. The first is infrastructure. So those of you that are in cities, especially those of you that are in Colorado, you likely noticed that a lot of cities changed the way that their infrastructure was laid out to facilitate and encourage active transportation. So new riders had this period of time when they were able to ride with fewer cars on the road, there were fewer folks commuting, and there's less traffic on the streets, that sort of thing. And they were really able to capitalize on changing traffic patterns to have a safer, more fun ride. So the number two motivating factor that we could do is create fun, safe places for cyclists to ride. But the most important way that we can help foster their continued participation is by creating a sense of community. So these riders were not able to join group rides leaving from the bike shop like those of us who ride typically do. They weren't able to join events or do fundraising rides, that sort of thing. So if there's one big lever that we can all pull as outdoor retailers, it would be creating this sense of community and really building a sense of community, to use the same term again, but yeah, just to welcome new riders in, because they've been riding in isolation for a long time. Riding is an activity in which they can engage safely while social distancing from their riding partners, but group rides, events, these sorts of things, and creating some way that they can engage with other riders is the #1 way that we can ensure their continued participation.
That's great. I want to bring up a note that came up on a few of our calls prior to the panel, which you just alluded to, and I think, Stephanie, you said it, where the screen is no longer a barrier, in that that's not the portal to leisure, and that now we have this great opportunity. And can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's also part of the research findings that's included in the report that Jennifer referenced, in that screen fatigue is very real, and we can now use that screen fatigue as an opportunity to incentivize more outdoor participation. So people want to get away from their screens, whereas 5 years ago it was the opposite.
That's great, thank you. And Nick, there are also some similarities with our discussions and what Patrick shared about some of the new ridership is brand new participation, some of it's changing from different disciplines. What are some of the insights you've seen on the snow side?
Yeah, in general, we're all doing very similar study, and COVID had really given us the opportunity to stop what we're doing, take a good look at our constituents, our audience, our members, and really determine what is going to be impactful to help them get through COVID, understand the opportunities, understand the barriers. SIA has been performing annual participation reports well before I was in this role, greater than 30 years. And what we've done is we've really focused on everyone in the winter outdoor community that participates. So that's whether you're cross-country skiing, you're Nordic, uphill, downhill, whether you're sledding, snowshoeing, whatever that medium might be. We're looking at all of those individuals, and we're looking at the pipeline, and we're looking for opportunities to get people outdoor, and as we all are, really embracing that data and showing how we can affect positive change. One of the things that we are focused on is just that participation study. We have our cousin group, National Ski Area Association. They focus on skier visits. So just to share some of their good work, there were 59 million skier visits this last winter. If you all went to a ski resort and you went through a turnstile, you counted. If you went to a resort and you had trouble parking, you had long lift lines, you enjoyed your multi-mountain pass as much as you did, you were counted. What we're looking at overall participation. So there's a delta between those that participate in those outdoor sports where there is no turnstile. It's harder to quantify back to the turnstile skier visit. And so that delta is really where we're focusing a lot of our energy on that participation, low-hanging fruit and opportunity. And that goes back through to the supplier. So we share that data to them so they know how much product is being sold to their retailers. Goes to the retailer as well, how much product the retailer is selling to the consumer, and then we take it a step further back to the consumer studies as well. What we're finding in that research is that due to COVID, a lot of the baby boomers and the older participants chose not to participate for health reasons and safety. We saw a lot of younger participants getting on snow more frequently, participating. So that's a nice trend that we've been looking for. Going back to the screen comment, and the silver lining of COVID are all you parents out there getting your children outside, getting them participating, whether it's sledding or Nordic, or even alpine skiing or snowboarding, whatever that medium is. And we're fine with either way, by the way. We're also seeing that the core audience is participating more. They're getting more days under their belt. That's really helping to push those skier visit days up. But with the baby boomers participating less, that keeps that number a little on the flatter side. We did talk about the 59 million skier visits that we experienced this past winter. That was the 5th largest participation number that NSAA has tracked in the last 40 years. So it wasn't because it was a deep winter, because those that were out there will testify that it wasn't deep. Those that were in the east will tell you that you couldn't go to the east because Vermont borders were closed. So where were all those participants coming from? The core was coming back more and more. The other thing that we're looking at is snow safety. We also had record deaths this winter, which was a real disappointment. We need to be talking deeper about this education around snow safety. More people at resort means there's more people leaving the resort to go to the backcountry or the side country. That's a problem too. In Park City, where SIA is, just to the Looker's left of the canyons, Looker's right, there's a draw, and it's as attractive as you can imagine. You want to hit that every time you go skiing. I think there are 3 deaths in that one spot this winter. We have to be thinking about that. Big Cottonwood Canyon, there were a number of deaths in avalanche. There's an avalanche in North Conway, New Hampshire, if you would ever imagine that. And there was a death. Anyway, so there is a ton of research that we need to be doing, whether it's around participation, education, snow safety, younger audience, even our departing audience. And lastly, I would just say, this is all trending right back to where, those that bike, it's a very similar constituent. That individual is buying more product at a record number. The retailers are going through product faster than it can be resupplied. We're having issues right now with supply chain and shipping, so that's going to be an interesting issue for us come into the October, November timeframe. But as we look at it right now, the industry's healthy, suppliers are healthy, retailers are healthy, and the resorts are healthy. So we're going to work as well as we can using the data that we are gathering to keep pushing that information out.
Thanks, Nick.
Yep.
So across the board, there's just huge opportunity. Even where we find things that might look like bad news, those things open up new possibilities and give us places to focus. And data, for a word that literally means facts and figures, can mean different things to different people. So today we want to kind of start with the data. What do we know? And then how do we know it? And then what are we going to do about it? How do we take those insights, can convert them to practical things that you can do back at home? And so let's see. Let's start with Stephanie for the
Hi, Tobie.
For the takeaways.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. Before I share my remarks, I would like to first acknowledge that we are working, building community, and learning together on the territorial, ancestral, and unceded land of the Cheyenne, Ute, and Arapaho First Nations. So, Tobie, absolutely. We hear it in rooms and various sectors, from the policy space to business meetings to advocacy and nonprofit and philanthropic conversations. The outdoors is having a moment. Now, what do we know about that moment? That's the purpose of this conversation, right? What do we know? And how can we use that knowledge to build on the movement? What we're really interested in at the Outdoor Foundation and through our Thrive Outside initiative is using that data to inform outdoor equity and increasing access among youth and families in underserved communities to the outdoors. So taking this data and turning it into real, tangible, actionable steps, real tactics that I think actually translate to a variety of different spaces outside just the nonprofit and direct service provider space. It also translates into retail, into policy making, into community engagement as a whole. And so in your notebook, and I think Tobie may have mentioned it, I think it's page 3. You can follow along with me on the 5 fun ways to make data useful. I'll be here all week. Just kidding, I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine, it's great. This is all a great memory trip back to school days. Open to page 3, get your pens out.
And I was never an educator, but bless the educators in the room. Anyway, so the first one, it really does align with Jennifer's sharing of her data. And it's interesting to hear the different research projects with SIA, with PeopleForBikes, and a number of other sources, that we're seeing a lot of the same trends. Therefore, the tactics really are, again, as I said, transferable across sectors and across contexts. So the first is really figuring out how we're investing in close-to-home activities, how we're creating opportunities for people to participate in outdoor activities that are close to home. And what does that mean on the ground? So for our Thrive communities, that means advocating for policies and budgets that invest in local urban green spaces is one example. The second piece is, again, to Jennifer's point on the first finding that she outlined, people want to be with their family and friends. People are sick of feeling isolated. And so how can we create programs outside that really build on that relational piece? The third piece is around developing programs that are building on the diversification we're seeing in the new outdoor participant. One thing that is a little concerning that we did find in our research is that a quarter of the participants that we surveyed will potentially go back to non-outdoor activities, to their pre-pandemic activities once restrictions are lifted. So all of these tactics are really in service to retaining the new outdoor participant and diversifying and creating a more inclusive environment. The fourth is to really encourage people to start small. We found that low barrier activities, and this is true, I think, across various research projects specific to our annual participation study, and we've seen it in other areas, that people are able to, when they're able to access low barrier to entry activities, they're actually on-ramps to more greater participation and more frequent participation. And then the fifth, again, to Jennifer's final point, really is around positioning outdoor activities and lifting up the activities themselves as an overall antidote. People are feeling afraid and lonely, and especially, you know, with the Delta variant, it feels unending and overwhelming. And so if we can really work to partner with the healthcare industry, we can advocate for programs like Nature RX that really does look at the benefits, the transformative benefits of nature. We're all in a better spot. So I think I covered all five under my 5 minutes.
Very well done. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Tobie.
Patrick, what has PeopleForBikes done on the bike side to help these new riders?
I'm glad you asked, Tobie. PeopleForBikes has created a digital platform called RideSpot. And while I am no expert on RideSpot, there is an expert amongst us.
Thanks, Patrick. So RideSpot was born out of a research project that PeopleForBikes did to find the greatest barriers to cycling. And the top two barriers, far and away, number one was finding safe places to ride, and two, finding other people to ride with, which is amazing because we discovered this well before the pandemic. And so while we didn't set out to create a post-pandemic ride tool, that's what we've done. The conclusions are the same. People want to ride safely, and they want to ride together. So we set out to create a neutral, story-forward route-sharing platform. And that's a lot of fun words, but it's basically a simple way to answer the question, where's a good place to ride? And if you've ever traveled to go riding and you go into a city that you've never been, where do you go to answer that question? Bike shop, right. So we wanted to create a simple platform where bike shops could let that local knowledge shine. Because we've all been in that scenario where they grab the pen, the receipt, and they draw it, and then you sweat through it and you get lost. So we wanted to get past that. We wanted to make it a digital, seamless digital experience, super easy. So we have a rider app, which all of you should download, maybe not right now, but at some point today you can use the QR code in your book to download it. Please join RideSpot, find routes in your area. You can also join as a retailer, and we call those affiliates. And it can be a retailer, an advocacy group, it can be a bike club or a supplier. You can join as an affiliate for free. You can host routes. When you post routes, they're endorsed. We call them classic routes. And those sit at the top above the routes from local riders. Anyone can come across that if they open the app near you. They can see it, save it, and even walk out the door and navigate within seconds. So super easy. We also have tools to host events, and so they put everything in one place: start time, map, waiver, registration, all of that. And we also just launched some new features called challenges, where as affiliates you can host frequency, mileage, or even route-based challenges and incentivize riders to participate. So there's stellar tools. Even though we just launched them in May, we've seen a pretty dramatic increase in ridership and completion rates of those challenges. So please, join RideSpot as an affiliate, set up your challenge. It is literally my job to make you successful, so don't be shy. Please reach out, introduce yourself, and I will do all the work for you. So that's RideSpot. Thanks, Patrick. Okay, thank you for letting us goof around up here. Nick, can you give us a little insight on the snow side?
Absolutely. So in the research that we've done, and no shocker to anyone in this room, the bad news is winter sport is very white in all areas, and is not diverse. And but that presents an amazing opportunity. So to do that, and fully understanding that the retailers are the front line of diversification, we went on a mission to create tools to specifically help our industry and our retailers and our suppliers really understand the benefit of diversification and what that means. So as part of that, we've created the Inclusion Leadership Handbook as a way for a supplier to influence and introduce diversification into your workplace. And that goes as well for the retailers too. Secondly, we've created tools to create the inclusive mindset. It doesn't happen overnight. It's nothing that is going to just show up on your doorstep. You have to really embrace this mindset. You have to nurture it. You have to get some outside counsel to help you understand what that looks like and what it means and where those opportunities lie. Secondly, we did an extensive series of town halls, bringing in a lot of external diversified leadership to help our industry, our members, our retailers really understand what it means to diversify. Again, as we are talking about these 59 million skier visits, we're talking about participation days. As an industry, we're only 3% of the population in the US participating. Do the math. The opportunity is right in front of you, and the upside is huge. So we're trying to introduce these tools and education out to our members so they can change the way they operate their internal business with their staff, the way they look external, the way they introduce themselves to the retail community, and lastly, the way they look to the consumer. We also have monthly workshops, which we're pushing out to our members as a way to continue this education. Some people look at it as if it's going to go away. It's not going away. This is in perpetuity. This is for the remainder of my life and your children's life and their children, and so on and so on. So we have to continue to push the envelope on this topic. We have to create these tools, and we have to really focus on giving more people in our populated communities opportunities in our space. We also have to understand the impact and what that had on our outdoor winter community. What has COVID done to the community? What has all of these different topics, whether it's climate, whether it's advocacy, how is that affecting our industry? And what tools can we do to help our members push that through? We have an annual participation report that we produce to really help our members understand who's buying their product, when are they getting the product, how much are they spending on that product, and what can you expect season over season, year over year, so on and so forth. Lastly, we do a ton of consumer in-depth studies to really introduce that consumer back to our member, supplier, retailer, resort reps, so they can have a more intimate relationship with that consumer, but also understand, as I mentioned, the when, the where, the how. As you all know, the internet, you can buy whatever you want with a stroke of with a mouse or your fingertip. This is going to continue into all of our spaces. So we have to prepare ourselves and get to know that consumer in a stronger way. Lastly, it's how we take this information and we can aggregate it, whether it's with PeopleForBikes, whether it's with OIA, whether it's with NSAA. How can we use this aggregated information to really inform the members out here in this room, upstairs, out on the street? All of this comes at a cost, and it's hard work. We have a wonderful staff that produces this material, hones in on it, and then we produce it and we put it out to our members. I urge you to use it. It's on our website, snowsports.org. It's right there. We do find a lot of our members want to use it. Maybe they're intimidated. They don't know how to read it. We have people that can help you understand that data. So please reach out, and we're here to help you.
Thanks, Nick.
Yep.
I had a mentor that always told me that if you had bad news, you should put it between two slices of good news. So I'm going to say that the good news is we have an incredible opportunity in front of us, all of us. The slightly less great news is it's going to be work. It's going to take work. And right now, if you're a retailer, you probably want to punch me in the face because you're exhausted, you're overworked. But this is an investment in the forever future that could change your business. And so if you don't have time to do it, you might have money in the bank to hire someone that can. Now is the time to invest in these things, to kind of take up all of these organizations' resources and put them to work. And so it is going to take work. And then the last piece of good news is that we're not in this alone. There's a room full of people here that you have more in common than not. And so I hope that you connect with other retailers while you're here. You have all of us in our organizations who have done incredible work to put these resources at your fingertips. And so we invite you to take advantage of that. Put those to work. And then immediately after this, as opposed to having a Q&A here, we'd like to invite y'all to join us right outside the hall, out the door and to the left. You can get all of their autographs in your fancy little notebook. And we would love to meet you. We would love to answer questions specific to your business or your organization. But I would like you to join me in giving our panelists a round of applause. Again, thank you very much for coming. My name is Tobie DePauw. I hope to meet you sometime this week. Have a great day.